In the past, the United States has been a major contributor in aiding in humanitarian crisis. An empirical example I can give of this is during World War II, when there was a mass genocide being committed within Germany. The United States took its position and stepped in and stopped this. This is something that parallels with our status quo right now. The United States should cease arms sales to Saudi Arabia in order to stop the war in Yemen. There's three main reasons for this. One is because of the fact that it would send an international signal that the war in Yemen is not okay. Two, it would stop the war in Yemen through arms sales. Three, it would also prevent cascading conflicts within the Middle East. The first reason, it sends an international signal stating that the humanitarian crisis that's happening with Yemen is not okay. The United States is such a large hegemonic entity, and other countries follow suit in what the United States is doing. Whenever we greenlight atrocious acts that are happening within Yemen, this just makes it look like it is okay and completely ethical. The United States supplies at least 60% of the arms sales that are happening within Saudi Arabia, and most of those arms sales are being sold to third parties such as Al-Qaeda and the Houthi rebels and other form of radical terrorist groups that cause massive genocide within Yemen. If the United States were to cease arms sales in Yemen, this would send an international signal stating that it is not okay, and that if they were to pull back, then Yemen would, Saudi Arabia would continue to also pull back within the war in Yemen. That would decrease the amount of violence that is happening with Yemen right now. An article published by CNN cited the specific examples of the major atrocities that are happening within Yemen. At least 12 children die every 2 hours because of something atrocious that is happening with Yemen now. There is massive famine and children are continue to starve to death on the daily, and the United States continues to do nothing about it. Second, it aids in ceasing the war in Yemen. An article published by Foreign Policy that was written by a Pentagon correspondent specifically cited the examples of how the United States is just such a large contributor within the war in Yemen. If we were to pull arms sales out of Yemen, there would be no way that the war would be able to continue. The war is completely fueled by United States equipment, by the amount of military training that goes into it, by the amount of funding that goes into it, and just the amount of effort being put into the war is almost completely by the United States. If the United States were to pull out, then there would be no other option than for the war to stop. My third reason is because Yemen instability causes arms racing and miscalculation. This causes cascading effects. This is according to the author Karen Young, who is a PhD major within foreign policy. She produced a book stating specifically how the United States is just such a large entity and how Yemen instability could cause cascading effects within the Middle East. The Middle East is just so fragile, and Yemen having the civil war within the status quo, means that it spills over to the other neighboring countries, that would cause more proliferation and more arms spending that would just lead to a spillover effect that would cause the Yemen war to just spill over to the other countries. The United States should pull out of Yemen, pull its arms sales out of Saudi Arabia now, so that the war in Yemen could stop, so that we can be able to prevent this massive crisis that can happen within the Middle East. In conclusion, the United States is such a major contributor to arms sales, and I urge you to consider this when casting a ballot and making your voting, and even just engaging within simple conversation and discourse within others to be able to stop this massive humanitarian crisis that is happening within Yemen now. Thank you.